Welcome back, everyone, to episode 5 of the Speedrun Series. I am currently rated 638 on my Speedrun account. I'm keeping my baby Rosen profile picture for now. And let's see what happens. I'm just going to hop straight into a game. So let's get this party started. Okay, playing Johnny Truegood. And yeah, still sticking with e4. We have a king's pawn. And we have knight f6. Okay, are we going to see the first Stafford gambit of this speedrun? Now, knight f6, very playable move. It's the beginning of the Petrov defense. There are a few options for white, like knight c3 is completely playable. d4 is an interesting line. But the most principled move is to take the pawn. Now, a lot of beginners will take here walking into queen e2, which can go very wrong for black very quickly. And I think we're going to see some quick downfall of black. Although, okay, with d6, it is a little bit tricky because now both knights are hanging. And I definitely don't want to take this knight, although do I? Wait a minute, I don't think I've seen this position before. I was thinking I can play knight f3, which saves my knight, leaves this knight attacked and pinned. But if I play knight f3, there's queen e7. And black is actually defending. I want to note, and I'll share this in more detail after the game, that queen e7 is actually a very interesting line that was recently played at the US Championship, I guess a year ago, by a Wonder Liang against Fabiano Caruana. But that's a story for later. Yeah, if I play knight f3, queen e7, I'm not winning anything. So I think it makes sense to take the knight. Black is likely to take back. And then I'll go up a pawn. I'll have a lot of interesting things to share after this game in terms of the opening. But for now, I'm happy to have won a pawn. And I might as well trade queens. It makes sense to simplify when you're up material. And we essentially have a queenless middle game, but I have the extra center pawn. Black develops and attacks it. Now, there are a few ways to deal with this threat. I probably don't want to push because that allows knight b4, and then I have two pawns hanging. So I can play bishop e3, develop and defend. I could play c3. Could play bishop b5 too to pin the knight. There's a lot of acceptable moves here. I kind of like bishop b5. I think this is a more active move. Getting ready to castle. And in pinning the knight, I'm essentially defending the pawn. And I was also setting up a threat, which black didn't really deal with. The threat is d5, which I think is almost winning a piece. I'm going to play d5. We'll see if my opponent can come up with the best response. The knight can't legally move. Yeah, a6 is it's definitely the way to go to try and not lose a full piece for black. So if I take the knight, I lose the bishop. I could then win the pawn if I can draw arrows. I can take on b7. And it looks like this is going to be a trade. Now the other option is to play bishop a4, but then black has b5. And then I can take, and then take. And black will wind up with double a pawns, all of this pawn on c6. I don't want to take too much time here. I think I'm going to play bishop a4. And then if b5, I could also consider taking first and then taking. I think in most lines I'm going to maintain the extra pawn. But black is definitely succeeding in trying to fight back. And after the dust settles, the c-pawn is going to be attacked. So if I play bishop b3, then there's knight d4, and rather not deal with that. If I take, I'll be up 2 pawns in that position. It looks nice. Let's go for this. I will say, though, that black might be doing fine here. Like, bishop takes e2. Yeah, now bishop e4 is coming. There's also a threat of bishop takes b1 and rook takes a2. So I might not even be objectively better here. Wow. After what I thought was a very dubious opening from black. And do have to manage my time. Okay, there are a few options here. I can castle, basically allow black to win back the pawn. But it's really a matter of trying to develop. I like the move of bishop f4. Simply developing and attacking the c7 pawn. Black castles very quickly. Wow, so defending the pawn and threatening rook d1. So I do have to be very careful. I could play knight c3. I could also castle. Not sure if it makes a difference. Like, both moves I want to play eventually. I think I'll castle first. Just ensuring my king's not getting punished in the center. But big kudos to my opponent for for definitely getting a very fine position. Even though I'm still up a pawn, life should still be okay. I'm gonna play rook c1 here. Saving the rook, supporting the c-pawn. I do have to move a lot quicker. Like in this series, I do like to take my time to explain my moves, but I do have to be conscientious of time management. So knight c3, very normal move, just developing. If b4, then I'll have to find a different square for the knight. I'm realizing here it would be really nice to open the a file. So I'm going to play a4. Like, even though queens are off the board, the black king is in danger of getting mated. Like, if take, I'm already threatening mate in 1. Bishop g5. I was going to say that h6 didn't seem to have a purpose, but I guess black was preparing this. But I think I'm very happy to take the bishop. And then next move, I'll take the pawn. And is black going to see my mate in 1 threat? Okay. That's a relief. I keep my winning streak alive. Up to 17 wins now. Yeah, I think out of all my games in this series, that was my toughest game yet. And I definitely want to take a few moments to go back and review. Because, yeah, at the beginning, I thought it was going to be just a one-sided landslide in my favor. Like queen e2. A lot of beginners play knight f6 here and then walk into this nasty discovery where white wins the queen. Yeah, there's no way to save the black queen. But yeah, after d6, this is somehow playable for black. Now, I want to show this line queen e7, because this is a very tricky variation. I guess it's called the Damiano, maybe Damiano variation of the Petrov. The idea of queen e7 is after takes, there's pawn d6. And I think I featured this line in a few videos a while ago. If I can find them, I'll link them below. But the idea of this line is black is winning back the piece. And there's a trap here after d4, takes, knight c6. Black wants to win back the pawn. And I actually had this position in a tournament game several years ago, back when I was 2200. And within 2 moves, I was playing white. Within 2 moves, I was losing material. I played the move bishop f4, very natural to develop and defend. And then my opponent hit me with g5. I thought, okay, I just move back, save the bishop. But then this is already a big mistake. It's black to move here and win material. Feel free to pause the video if you want to find it. But the move is f5. And amazingly, black is going to trap my bishop, and there's not much I can do about it. I can't en passant because then I lose my queen. So this is a funny trap that I thought maybe we could have transposed into, or at least we could have transposed into the queen e7 line, because black has queen e7 in this position. And then if d4 takes, we get the same sort of variation. Now, this was played in the US Championship last year. Wonder Liang played this as black against Fabiano Caruana. I think Fabiano played bishop b5 here, but he wasn't able to win against a Wonder. Like, a Wonder held him to a draw. So even at the Grandmaster level, this line is playable. Now, going back to what happened in the game, after takes, I won a clean pawn, but I don't think I handled things correctly. Maybe bishop b5 was not the right approach. Maybe here I should have played c3, because after d5, yeah, my opponent played, I think, very nicely to make things messy. And then even though I was up a couple pawns, I was behind development. I was only up a pawn here. Castling was very interesting. But I think around here, like once I played rook c1, I was consolidating and managed to put on the pressure. So, we're 13 minutes in. How about I do one more game for this episode? I rated 652 now. Do a new game. Now playing King Clyde. White again. Okay, I'll play e4. Are we going to have the same opening? No, we have a more standard knight c6. I'll play the Italian, bishop c4. Knight f6 and bishop c5 are the two most common moves. And here I'll play d3. I played this in the previous episode. One of the most solid moves. Not going into the knight g5 lines, which are playable, but maybe I'll save them for future opponents. So we see kind of a weird move, knight b4, which definitely violates a few principles. Like, it's moving away from the center. It's not really attacking anything. It's also moving the same piece twice. And it's leaving the pawn on e5 undefended. So, gonna show no mercy here. Hopefully in this game I can more cleanly convert the early extra pawn advantage. Nice thing about knight takes e5 is now I'm threatening knight takes f7 or bishop takes f7. So black has to be very, very careful. I think the only reasonable move is pawn d5, which we do see. I wonder if this is like some weird prepared gambit, like open the center and try and exploit my knight. But I think everything is under control. I can take. And there's actually a cool idea. If black were to play queen e7, I would have castled. Said, oh no, my knight, and then rook e1 would win the queen. A very common motif when the e-file's open. In this case, I think I'm still happy to castle. I mean, it was tempting to maybe consider queen f3, but I think it's better to get the king safe, have the option for rook e1 or queen f3 next move. And yeah, the downside of this knight coming into my territory and not really attacking anything, anytime I want, I can play a move like a3, and black will have to spend time moving back. So here, yeah, my knight seems to be attacked, but I don't need to defend it because I have rook e1. So I could like be tricky and play a move that doesn't defend the knight. But I think in this case, like rook e1, it's just a good move to include. Like rooks are happy on open files. I'm also aligning with a king, which is not castled yet. Black should definitely put a bishop like on e6 or e7. If we see bishop e7 or bishop e6, then it still takes work for white. I was thinking about queen f3, hitting the pawn, but I don't want to make things messy. Like queen f3, there's knight takes c2, and even if I win f7, and that line could be good for white, but generally when you're up material, you want to try and keep things simple. So I would very much like to develop. I like the move knight c3. Just applying more pressure to the center. In some sense, this knight is pinned to the f7 pawn. So if black takes on c3, I can then take on f7 and then capture back. But okay, black is leaving the knight here. So if I take, it's just a trade. Yeah, I'm looking for like the forcing moves. So obviously the capture is on d5. A move like knight b5 attacking the queen could be interesting. Also a3. I don't think there's any like easy way to win material. But I kind of like this move a3. Because if this knight moves right away, then I just win the knight on d5. So black will probably have to take first. I'll take back. And then if we see a move like knight c6, I could either trade or develop the bishop. But so far, it's just been about kind of keeping control, making sure my pieces are getting optimized. We see f6, so now, yeah, now it looks complicated because both knights are hanging, but if we simply think ahead a couple moves, I take this knight, black takes this knight, then this knight will be undefended. Knight's also pinned after f6, so yeah, black is asking for trouble. Now, do I want to take with the bishop or the knight? I think both moves are completely acceptable. Drawn more towards taking with the bishop, just immediately checking the king. And now my pawn is attacked. I could defend it, or I could just leave it on b4 and try and generate threats on the king side. I think in this case, there's no reason to give back the pawn. Like queen h5 is tempting, but then queen takes b4, and I'd rather just be materialistic, at least for a move. Hold on to the pawn. And there is a cool idea. When I play b5, I'm opening the fourth rank. So there are ideas of rook a4 and then swinging over someday. But after c6, okay, I'll take. And now the bishop can find a happy place on e4. The bishop is very nice here. Pressures the king side, but still the queen side as well. And yeah, going forward from here, there are a few different strategies. And we've seen a lot of cases throughout the speedrun where I'm up material and the strategy is usually either to trade or to attack. And I think this position probably calls for attacking just because, yeah, my queen can come to h5. I'm already threatening mate in 1. And I have the bishop, the other bishop, both pointed towards the king side. There's also potential to lift the rook over. There's not too many moves for black to defend. Like sometimes pawn moves like h6 or g6 create more weaknesses. And the queen can't really defend because my bishops control g6 and h6. So I think black has to move one of these pawns. Ooh, okay, so the king is trying to run. Now it's a choice. Do I take the pawn with the queen or the bishop? And yeah, one move is definitely much more clearly winning than the other. And both moves are winning, but yeah, it's better to take with the bishop, not giving the chance for the king to run to f7, essentially forcing the king back here. And then it's a very simple mate in 2. We'll see if checkmate plays out on the board. Yeah, so the key move here is bishop g6. Discover check, cutting off any potential queen blocks, and controlling f7. So after king g8, queen h7 will be checkmate. Yeah, this mating pattern can come up a lot, and especially in kingside attacks. Opponent taking their time, but yeah, there's only one legal move. So I think this game was definitely more controlled than the first game. But yeah, hopefully some lessons to take away. I mean, my opponent very clearly violated some opening principles early on. I won a pawn, but it still took work. And it was a matter of kind of being patient, improving, developing, and then seizing the opportunity to win material. And then understanding that sometimes the best strategy is just to go straight for the king. Yeah, queen h5. If my opponent played a move like h6, it still would have taken like patience to win this. Like I can't sack immediately because the queen can take back. So I'm not sure what I would have done. Like maybe a move like bishop e3, just very solid developing move. Optimize further. There's also an idea like to maneuver the knight e2 to g3, and maybe eventually to f5. The knight's not actually doing much on c3, so sometimes in the middle game you want to look for the pieces that aren't doing much and try and make them do something. Alternatively, there's an idea of bishop g6 and then knight e4 to centralize the knight. So yeah, perhaps it would have been more of a fight if black played h6 or g6. So we're about 25 minutes in. I think I'm going to wrap it up for this episode. Hope you guys learned a thing or two. If you have questions or comments, leave them below. And I'll see you guys soon for episode 6. Stay tuned.